All right, looks like we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to Joshua's Magic, channel about the intersection of spirituality and the ordinary world. As usual, we're going to be reviewing some quotes on from the Ageless Wisdom by Alice A. Bailey on the topic of hidden things. I've got my normal setup back, so hopefully there won't be any disruptions like there were last week. But feel free to chime in the comments and I'll try to respond to any questions or thoughts you have there. And at the end of the stream, we're going to do a contemplation on, or a contemplation slash meditation on the hidden things in your life that should be revealed to you. So stick around for that. But without further ado, we'll move into the first quote. Okay. According to the concordance, the name Mary means the exalted of the Lord. As one says these words, the famous picture by Murillo of the Virgin standing on the crescent moon and being gathered up into the clouds of heaven comes to mind. Such is the assumption of the Virgin into glory. There is another interesting point in connection with the constellation Virgo, upon which we might touch. Mary, the Virgin, in the symbolism of the ancient wisdom, stands for virgin matter, for the substance which nurtures and nourishes and hides within itself the Christ child, the Christ consciousness. In the last analysis, it is through form and matter that God stands revealed. That is the story of the divine incarnation. Matter, overshadowed by the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity, brings to the birth the second aspect of the Trinity in the person of Christ, cosmic, mythical, and individual. So we're getting at that there's more than any simply literal understanding of the biblical stories. There's also a symbolic aspect to it. And I believe in the Torah and the Jewish scriptures, it was understood that the scriptures had at least 7 levels of meaning. And so I think that's often a good rule of thumb to apply to any scriptures. But it's saying Mary represents matter. And then when matter is impregnated by spirit, it begins to, over time, grow, and then eventually one day give birth to the Christ child, the fully formed Christ. And he's also talking that Christ can mean a few different things, the cosmic Christ, the mythical Christ, and the individual Christ. And I think the individual Christ here is representing the Christ within you. So there's some meaning about the story of Mary and the virgin birth there. But moving on to the next quote. I actually the second one is pretty good too. It's the next paragraph in this book here. So it sort of plays off of what was just said. All right. Associated with the story of the heavens, there are 3 constellations beside the constellation Virgo, which are symbolized by women. There is Cassiopeia, the woman enthroned. This is the constellation which is the symbol of the stage in human life at which matter and form are dominant and triumphant. When the inner divine life is so deeply hidden that it shows no sign, and only the material nature controls and rules. Then there comes the later stage in history of the race and of the Indral, when we find Coma Berenice symbolically emerging. The woman bearing the Christ child is seen. Here, matter begins to reveal its true function, which is to bring to birth the Christ in every form. When the turning of the great wheel of life has played its part, then Mary can come out of Galilee from Nazareth and journey to Bethlehem, there to give birth to the Savior. Finally, there is Andromeda, the woman chained, or matter brought into subservience to the soul. The soul, or the Christ, now rules. First matter, dominant, enthroned, and triumphant. Then matter, the custodian of hidden divinity, beauty, and reality, ready to bring them to birth. Finally, matter as the servant of that which has been born, the Christ. However, none of this is brought about unless the journey is made from Nazareth, the place of consecration, and from Galilee, the place of the daily round of life. And this is true whether one is speaking of the cosmic Christ, hidden by the form of the solar system, the mythic Christ, hidden in humanity down the ages, of the historical Christ concealed within the form of Jesus, or of the individual Christ hidden within the ordinary man. For always the routine is the same: the journey, the new birth, the experience of life, and the service to be rendered, the death to be endured, and then the resurrection to be into more extended service. So even in the constellations in the heavens, there's symbolic meaning. I mean, he lays it out pretty well. There's not a lot more for me to add to it, but the stage of women, male and female represent different things, but in this one passage, women represent matter, and spirit is represented by the male force. So at one point, matter is dominant, where humanity is subject to matter and thinking materialistically. But over time, the journey shifts and spirit is dominant, and the spiritual consciousness reigns. By the way, you can find all these on my Instagram, the links below. I also post them on Minds and Twitter. And if you're liking this video, please leave me a like. I'd really appreciate it. So, moving along to the next quote. This one I'm sharing from Minds because it doesn't have a character limit on Instagram, so I had to cut part of it off on Instagram and post in the comments. But anyway, on the path of return, renunciation is the rule, in contradistinction to the earlier method. So the path of return, he's meaning returning spiritually to the symbolic Father's house. There's a path of descent into matter, and then there's a path of return out of matter. So that's what he's talking about here. The indwelling life renounces the forms heretofore regarded, and necessarily so, as essential by the use of the intelligence which has linked these two pairs of opposites, spirit and matter, consciousness and form. The forms built of matter by the aid of the intelligence are one after another repudiated by the aid of that same intelligence, of reasoning faculty transmuted into wisdom. The forms go, but the life remains. Excuse me. The colors are gradually reabsorbed, but the divine virtues persist, stable now and enduring, of the use by reason of experience. Not potentially are these attributes divine, but developed into the powers for use. Inherent faculty has become active characteristics carried to the nth power. The veils are discarded one by one, the sheaths are dropped and superseded, the vehicles are dispensed with, and the forms are no longer required. But the life ever remains and returns to its parent ray. It is resolved back into its primary plus activity and expression, plus experience and the ability to manifest, plus all that constitutes the difference between the ignorant savage and the solar logos. This has been consummated by the utilization of many forms by the life, the intelligence constituting the means whereby that life employed those forms as a mode of learning. Having manifested as an aspect of this primary ray, having through many incarnations differentiated that ray into many different component parts, having veiled himself under all of the 7 colors that compose that ray, the reincarnate jiva, which means soul, takes the path of return from the 7 becomes the 3, and from the 3 becomes the 1. So before getting into the rest of it, there are these 7 divine rays that color everything. You and me psychologically, our soul, the matter, the solar system, different countries. And I won't get into too much of that now, but the rays are sort of analogous to colors. And what he's saying here is through each life, and maybe different parts within a life, you're manifesting some color of a ray or some sub-ray. So the first ray is said to be red. So you'll have the sub-rays, which are all on seven different sub-colors of red, so to speak. And you play that out in one life, then you move on to the next one, you play that out. And eventually it's sort of discarded, but all the experience and what you've developed from it comes back to the indwelling life. So that's what he's kind of talking about with colors here. All right, moving along. When the man does this consciously, when he willingly and with full comprehension of what he has to do, endeavors to set the indwelling life free from the veils that hide and from the sheaths that imprison, he discovers the method whereby this is accomplished is by the subjective life of occult meditation and the objective life of service. In service is renunciation, and under the occult law, therefore, in service, the subjective finds liberation and is set free from objective manifestation. Think this out, for it has much hidden under the veil of words. So part of what's being said here is that you discard all these forms, and forms aren't necessarily just physical bodies. They're forms of ideas, forms of emotions, or emotional tendencies. Like you might get really, into football, and that might be correct for you for a time, but then it's time to move on from that. Or on a deeper level, just desire itself. Your life might be largely governed by desire, but then at a certain level of spiritual development, desire needs to be sort of subjugated to higher aspirations, to the betterment of yourself or helping of others and things like that. And so the sort of ladder goes up where you grab onto one thing and you hold on to it for a while, but then when you move high enough, you have to sort of let go of it and let it fall below the threshold of consciousness. And what he's saying about service here is, well, first on occult meditation. Occult meditation is basically just the meditation of the soul, and you following your soul's meditation to the extent that you can. So in normal meditation, you can meditate on this, you can meditate on that, you could meditate on your navel or some idea. But in occult meditation, it's the meditation of the soul and you trying to match what your soul is meditating on. So your soul might want you to be a firefighter for some reason. And if you're really into it and you're able to receive that and surrender to it, you'll follow that path in your life. Or it might be something more abstract, like soul meditating on you developing a certain consciousness, but not necessarily having to do with any outward activity per se. But the life of service frees you from yourself. The lower evolved spiritually are serving themselves. They're serving their desires, their wants, their ego, primarily anyway. And that imprisons you in this sort of separated being that's isolated from everybody else. But the life of service frees you because you're putting the attention on doing good for others, on being of benefit to those around you. And thus you're slowly moving towards from the level of separation to the level of connection or unity or the soul or the group. So continuing on, the occult student, therefore, from the standpoint of color, has two things to do in meditation. One, to discover his three major colors as manifested in the personality, the ego, the soul, and the monad. So the personality is pretty obvious, your mind, emotions, your body. The ego, he refers to the soul as the ego sometimes. I think that's probably before the ego got used in the kind of me, self-centered way. Maybe it had different use in the past. And the monad is kind of your symbolically the point of pure spirit. It's sort of like if Christ is analogous to your soul, the monad is analogous to the Father. And so each of these things is on a different ray, and or so to speak, has a different color. And so your personality might be on the first ray of will or power, and you might be a very aggressive, willful sort of person, but your soul might be on the second ray, the ray of love, wisdom. And so you need to incorporate more consciousness of wisdom and love to move close to that soul ray. And then the ray of the monad, which is only experienced by people who have achieved a degree of integration of the soul and personality. So people that are, from ordinary humanity's perspective, fairly high up, do they experience the monad at all? But the monad might be, let's say, on the third ray of active intelligence, and can only speculate what that might express itself like in terms of the monad, but it might have to do with thinking clearly or revealing things, because the third ray has to do with light. But figuring out which of these rays your different vehicles are on is what he's talking here. And then number 2 says, to resolve then the lower quaternary into the 3, the first stage of which is consciously to withdraw into the ego or the soul, and so atrophy the lower self. The student begins by eliminating the colors that are not desirable, killing out all low or coarse vibration, and eventually so refining his vehicles that the 3 major colors, of which he is the expression, shine out with perfect clarity. This leads him up to the 3rd initiation. After that, he seeks to resolve the 3 into the 1, until he has withdrawn all his consciousness from the lower vehicles into the monadic sheath. So even the monad is considered a kind of sheath, and there's a deeper level of reality, or you, or whatever you want to define it as here. But he's saying the lower quaternary is the personality, and I believe, if I remember correctly, it's the astral body, the mental body, prana, which is the sort of life energy, primarily has to do with the etheric body, and the physical body. So resolving that into the 3 and withdrawing into the soul. So you don't necessarily lose your physical body or mental body, but you're withdrawing your consciousness to focus on the soul level. Yeah, and the 3rd initiation is one of it's, from our perspective, a fairly high achievement. It's basically where you eliminate fundamental false beliefs. It's sort of, you've cleared out your first initiation is getting control over the physical nature and desires and eliminating fear. The 2nd initiation has to do with emotional control, not being swayed one way or another by your emotions. But then the 3rd initiation has to do with the mind, and removing false beliefs and illusions. And each of these initiations is bridging where you are and making a further identification with the soul. And at the 3rd initiation, it's where, when that's completed, the identification of you and the soul is basically complete. And then the initiations after that are about the fusion of the soul and the personality, making contact with and joining with the monad, the sort of Father in heaven. So this one can be a little bit difficult to understand. If you have any questions, just comment on it and I'll try to respond to those as best I can. Okay. Let us see. Next one. This is the last one. Like I said, my computer is in the shop, so I only got to do 5 posts this week. But here is the last one. And this is from Discipleship in the New Age. The last one was from Letters on Occult Meditation. So this is him providing instructions to one of the disciples in the particular group he had with Alice Bailey in the 1920s to 40s, or maybe it was 30s to 40s. Here we go. In my last instruction to you, I pointed out the 3 realities in time, space, and this incarnation, which you have to face. I warned you against the deep sense of inferiority which sometimes handicaps your life expression. I told you to dwell more consciously in the light which streams from the face of the angel of the presence. This you have sought to do, but you forgot one thing, and this has come powerfully to light. The light which streams from the face of the angel, which is the face of the soul, reveals. How does it reveal, my brother? It reveals by bringing to the surface the hidden things, the germs of weakness, thus revealing defects and liability. I would here point out that when this happens, the sum total of that which is revealed can contribute to a glamour, a rising fog, a miasma of a poisonous nature. It is like the effect of a dawning sun in the early morning on a hot day which draws upward the mists and thus temporarily forms a fog between itself and the earth. Such was your case. The fog is fast dissipating, for as I said, his appearance is only temporary. So, like I said, this was a particular letter to a particular individual, but he's pointing out a useful thing to bear in mind is that when the soul's light streams into you more, or you develop more consciousness of it, it reveals things in you. And they're often things you probably don't want to see, like your lack of kindness to others, your greed or self-centeredness, things that you've been hiding, but now the soul's light comes through and reveals them to you. And that can create a kind of like he says, a glamour or miasma of negativity. But that'll pass, and it also helps to have a perspective that, now that it's something's being revealed, you can actually change it and better yourself. So I'm curious, what of these quotes spoke to you? What did you find interesting about them? Let me know in the comments, and maybe some discussion will ensue on that. But I would like to move to the meditation I have for this week. So there's a lot of things which are hidden to each of us. There's aspects of ourselves that are hidden. There's things about our relationships or others that might be hidden. And then there's things in the wider world that are going on that are hidden. And maybe they're not hidden. Maybe they're hidden by our own ignorance of them. So in this meditation, we're going to focus on something or some things that are hidden and invoking the light of the soul to reveal what God or our soul would have revealed to us at this time. And it might be wildly different. Somebody might have their personal life in order and something about the world needs to be revealed to them. Or it might be something in themselves that need to be revealed, or any number of things. But synthetically, we're all going to be focusing on what's hidden and what needs to be revealed. So let's move into it. I'm going to pull up a background photo here. It'll be nice to look at. And again, if you need more time on this meditation, pause the video or feel free to continue it later on. Okay. So you're walking along a trail and you find a cave your teacher told you about. And you head down underground into this cave to symbolically explore what's hidden to you. Take a minute to center your consciousness in the mind, and from there, center it again in the soul to the degree you're able. And then with the soul's light, allow the soul's light to pour through you, stimulating the pathways that are dark, revealing things that are unseen. And we're going to take a few minutes to allow this process to play out and allow yourself to become aware of the hidden things which you're meant to start seeing at this time. Okay. And if you need more time, feel free to pause the video and allow things to run their course. But I'm grateful for everybody that showed up and everybody who's tuning in later. I hope that was useful to you, and if you feel like sharing, I'd be interested in what was revealed to you. But until next time, like, share with somebody if you think they'd appreciate it, and subscribe if you haven't.